fun and it's not fair, but it is where we're at. Retention contributes as well. And one of the things about retention is where you guys can really help us. There are many reasons why people don't come back. Obviously, some of them we can't change, but when it comes to conflict with coaches, conflicts with players, spectators, that's where you can help us. And I want to give a shout out to the Texas High School Coaches Association because I believe they started a program last year called the Texas Way. Have y'all heard about the Texas Way? Who's actually taken the training? I got one guy? All right. All right. So the UIL and TASL have taken on to create a course for officials as well. And that's going to be a point of emphasis for me and Xavier and Elazar to have all of our chapter members take the Texas Way for officials. We need to improve as well in how we handle conflict and confrontation on the field. It's not just a one-way street. So hopefully that will see some improvements in sportsmanship and eventually Friday, November 7th. Richardson, J.J. Pierce. Okay, that's opposite what you told me, but we're good. Is Pierce in the house? Pierce picks Ricky Heron crew.
Heron.
All right, round one, pick two. Mesquite Poteet versus Ennis, Thursday, October 30th. Teo? Teo crew.
Oh.
Round one, pick three. The Colony versus Keller Fossil Ridge, Thursday, August 28th.
Week 6, Mansfield Summit, please.
Is that the date up there? You want to change the date, Coach? He wants to change to week 6, Shane. Mansfield Summit was the visitor? Oh. Let's let Xavier feel it. Okay. Correct. Thursday, 8/28. Ricky Heron crew.
Colony Fossil Ridge Heron.
Correct. Ricky Heron crew for that game. Round one, pick four. Jesuit versus J.J. Pierce, Friday, October 3rd. John Penn crew.
Penn.
Round one, pick five. Plano West versus McKinney Boyd, Friday, September 12th. Teo crew.
Oh.
Round one, pick six. Frisco Lone Star versus Frisco Wakeland, October 24th.
Ricky Heron.
Ricky Heron.
Heron.
Pick seven. McKinney Boyd versus Princeton, Thursday, November 6th.
No. Go up a line.
Oops, scratch that, my fault. Sorry, pick seven is Garland, North Garland versus Garland Rowlett, October 31st, Friday. Velasquez crew.
Velasquez.
Pick eight, McKinney Boyd versus Princeton, Thursday, November 6th.
Heron.
Ricky Heron crew.
Heron.
Pick nine, Frisco Memorial versus Anna, Thursday, October 30th. Do we have Frisco Memorial in the house?
Johnson.
Oh.
Johnson crew.
Bernard Johnson crew.
Johnson.
Pick 10, Royce City versus Tyler Legacy, Friday, October 10th.
Lawrence crew.
Lawrence crew, Shane Lawrence crew.
Lawrence.
Pick 11, Naaman Forest versus South Garland, Thursday, November 6th. Velasquez crew.
Velasquez.
Pick 12, Plano East versus Allen, Thursday, November 6th.
Majors.
Paul Majors crew.
Majors.
Pick 13, Dallas Hillcrest versus Dallas Woodrow Wilson, Friday, November 7th. Teo Crew.
O.
Pick 14, Frisco Heritage versus Frisco Centennial, Thursday, November 6th. Vanderhoff Crew.
Vanderhoff.
Pick 15, Anna versus Melissa, Friday, September 26th. Andre Liss Crew.
Liss.
Dallas South Oak Cliff versus North Shore, Friday, August 29th. Ricky Heron Crew.
Heron.
Pick 17, Lakeview Centennial versus Wiley, Thursday, October 30th. You said Liss?
Liss.
Was it Andre Liss, the pick coach? Okay, yes, that's correct, Shane. Pick 18, R.L. Turner versus Dallas Molina, Friday, October 31st. Buckner? Can you say it louder, Coach? Buckner Crew. Pick 19, Frisco Emerson versus Lovejoy, Thursday, October 16th. Ricky Heron Crew.
Heron.
Pick 20, Frisco Centennial versus McKinney North, Thursday, October 23rd. Joel Williams Crew.
Williams. Joel.
Pick 21, Creekview versus West Mesquite on Friday, October 24th. Heron? Ricky Heron Crew.
Heron is not available.
Not available, Coach.
Vanderhoff.
Vanderhoff Crew.
Vanderhoff.
Pick 22, Lancaster versus Waxahachie, Friday, October 31st. Mata Crew.
Mata.
Pick 23, Dallas Skyline versus DeSoto, Friday, October 31st. Ricky Heron Crew.
Heron.
Lake Highlands versus Forney, Thursday, August 28th. John Penn Crew.
Penn.
Pick 25, Waxahachie versus Duncanville, Friday, September 19th. John Penn Crew.
Penn.
Pick 26, Garland versus North Garland, Friday, November 7th. Carl Davis Crew.
Davis.
Pick 27, Duncanville versus DeSoto, Friday, October 10th. Ricky Heron Crew.
Heron.
Pick 28, Brian Adams versus Dallas Sunset, October 31st. John Matthews Crew.
Matthews.
Frisco Independence versus Frisco Lebanon Trail, Friday, September 5th. Velasquez Crew.
Velasquez is not available.
Not available, Coach. Vanderhoff Crew.
Vanderhoff.
Dallas Thomas Jefferson versus Dallas Seagoville, Friday, October 31st. Terrence Williams Crew.
Williams. Terrence.
Pick 31, Cedar Hill versus Mesquite Horn, Friday, October 31st. Daryl Cardell Crew.
Cardell.
Pick 32, South Garland versus Garland Saxe, Friday, October 24th. Elazar Mata Crew.
Mata.
Pick 33, Richardson Berkner versus Rockwall, Friday, August 29th. Do we have Berkner in the house? Elazar Mata Crew.
Mata.
Pick 34, Princeton versus West Mesquite, Friday, August 29th.
List.
Andre List Crew.
List.
Frisco versus Frisco Heritage, Friday, September 19th. Teo Crew.
O.
Garland Rowlett versus Naaman Forest, Friday, September 19th. Nat Maxon Crew.
Maxon.
Mesquite versus Duncanville, Friday, October 31st. Paul Wood Crew.
Wood.
Irving MacArthur versus Richardson, Thursday, November 6th. Is MacArthur here? Mata? Elazar Mata Crew.
Mata.
Prosper Walnut Grove versus Anna, Friday, October 7th. Teo Crew.
O.
Pick 40, Wiley East versus Garland, Friday, October 31st. Rodney Allison Crew.
Allison.
Pick 41, Plano versus Prosper Rock Hill, Friday, October 31st. Nat Maxon Crew.
Maxon.
Pick 42, Dallas W.T. White versus North Mesquite, Thursday, October 30th. Elazar Mata Crew.
Mata.
Pick 43, Rockwall versus North Forney, Friday, November 7th. John Penn Crew.
Penn.
Pick 44, Frisco Reedy versus Frisco, Friday, October 31st. John Penn Crew.
Penn.
Pick 45, Prosper Rock Hill versus McKinney, Friday, November 7th. Andre List Crew.
List.
Pick 46, Dallas Woodwell Wilson versus Dallas Spruce, Thursday, October 30th. Joel Williams Crew.
Williams. Joel.
Pick 47, Irving Nimitz versus Jesuit, Friday, November 7th. Rodney Allison Crew.
Allison.
Pick 48, Newman Smith versus Dallas W.T. White, Thursday, October 9th. Grady Dale crew.
Dale.
Pick 49, Crandall versus Terrell, Friday, October 31st. Joe Greer crew.
Greer.
Pick 50, Forney versus Rockwall, Friday, October 17th.
List.
Andre List crew.
List.
Pick 51, Richardson versus Lake Highlands, Friday, October 31st. Wasserman crew.
Wasserman.
Pick 52, Dennison versus Lovejoy, Friday, October 31st. John Penn crew.
Penn is not available.
I didn't even look, I'm sorry.
Andre List crew.
List.
Pick 53, McKinney North versus Frisco Heritage, Thursday, October 30th.
Rodney Allison.
Rodney Allison crew.
Allison.
Pick 54, Garland Saxey versus Naaman Forest, Friday, October 31st. Rick Ford crew.
Ford.
Pick 55, Dallas Sunset versus West Mesquite, Friday, November 7th. Did you say Gibson, Coach? Yes, Gibson crew.
Gibson.
Pick 56, Greenville versus Crandall, Thursday, November 6th. Grady Dale crew.
Dale.
Dallas Samuel versus South Oak Cliff, Friday, October 31st. Bernard Johnson crew.
Johnson.
Pick 58, Red Oak versus Burleson Centennial, Friday, October 24th. Tay O crew.
Oh.
Pick 59, West Mesquite versus Newman Smith, Friday, October 31st. Paul Majors crew.
Majors.
Pick 60, Lovejoy versus Frisco Memorial, Friday, November 7th. Rick Ford crew.
Ford.
Pick 61, Frisco Lebanon Trail versus Frisco Lone Star, Thursday, October 30th. Say Campbell, Coach? Campbell crew.
Campbell.
Pick 62, McKinney versus Plano East, Friday, October 31st. Vanderhoff crew.
Vanderhoff.
Pick 63, Melissa versus Dennison, Friday, November 7th. Vanderhoff crew.
Vanderhoff.
Pick 64, Terrell versus Mesquite Poteet, Thursday, November 6th. David Tucker crew.
Tucker.
Pick 65, Frisco Liberty versus Frisco Memorial, Friday, October 24th. John Penn crew.
Penn.
Pick 66, North Forney versus Forney, Friday, September 26th. Carl Davis crew.
Davis.
Pick 67, Wiley versus Wiley East, Friday, November 7th. Hills Armada crew.
Mata.
Pick 68, Denton Ryan versus Alito, Friday, October 3rd. Teo crew.
O.
Pick 69, Prosper versus Allen, Thursday, October 23rd.
That game's Friday.
Shane, they're saying that game is Friday the 24th. We'll pause for a second, we'll get it updated, Coach.
All right. 24.
Okay, Coach, looks like we got the date changed to Friday, October 24th. That's correct, right?
Yes, sir.
All right.
List.
Andre List crew.
List.
Pick 70, North Mesquite versus R.L. Turner, Thursday, November 6th. Bernard Johnson crew.
Johnson.
Pick 71, Dallas Adamson versus Dallas Hillcrest, Friday, October 31st. Grady Dale crew. Pick 72, Highland Park versus Midlothian, Friday, November 7th. Greg Mitchell crew, correct? Greg Mitchell crew.
Mitchell.
Pick 73, Irving versus Richardson Berkner, Thursday, October 23rd. Vanderhoff crew.
Vanderhoff.
Pick 74, Allen versus McKinney, Friday, September 26th. Tay-O crew.
Oh.
Pick 75, Dallas Molina versus Dallas Bryan Adams, Friday, November 7th. I didn't hear it, Coach. Terrence Williams crew.
Williams, Terrence.
Okay. Pick 76, Mesquite Horn versus Dallas Skyline, Thursday, November 6th. Joe Greer crew.
Greer.
Pick 77, Sherman versus Denison, Friday, August 29th. Paul Wood crew.
Wood.
Pick 78, Dallas Siegelville versus Dallas Adamson, Thursday, November 6th. Tay-O crew.
Oh.
Pick 79, Dallas Spruce versus Dallas Samuel, Friday, November 7th. Was that Dale? Grady Dale crew.
Dale.
Pick 80, Frisco Wakeland versus Sherman, Friday, October 31st. Joel Williams crew.
Williams, Joel.
Pick 81, Rockwall Heath versus Rockwall, Friday, October 31st. Carl Davis crew.
Davis.
Okay, moving on to round 2. Pick 1, The Colony versus Everman, Friday, September 19th.
Where's Rudy at?
Ricky Heron crew. What's the question? We're in round 2 now. This is the first pick of round 2.
X. Come here, X.
Okay, stand by. We'll take a look at it, Coach. Thank you. Okay. Round 2, pick 1.
What school is that?
Louisville Colony versus Everman. We just picked this one,
I know.
and then we just did this one.
go.
So we should be here.
Yeah, we are. The problem is on that it's fucked up, so you have to go from here.
What's wrong with it?
Let's go from here.
It's the same thing. Okay, thank you, Coach, for pointing that out. So the Louisville Colony versus Everman, Friday, September 19th. Ricky Heron crew.
Aaron.
I don't know whose that was. Yeah, we're going in the order that was on that sheet that you got. Mesquite Poteet versus Kaufman, Friday, October 17th. Ricky Heron crew.
Aaron.
R.L. Turner versus Newman Smith, Friday, October 17th. Say it again, please.
Bob Clark.
Bob Clark crew.
Clark.
Frisco Heritage versus Frisco Reedy, Friday, October 24th. Velasquez crew.
Velasquez.
Anna versus Frisco Emerson, Friday, October 10th. Teo crew.
O.
Lancaster versus Duncanville, Friday, October 17th. Daryl Cardell crew.
Cardell.
Naaman Forest versus North Garland, Friday, October 24th. David Stephen crew.
Stephen.
Frisco Emerson versus Denison, Friday, September 19th. Bernard Johnson crew.
Johnson.
Dallas Skyline versus Mesquite, Friday, October 17th. Grady Dale crew.
Dale.
Brian Adams versus Creekview, Thursday, October 16th. Randy Moose crew.
Moose.
McKinney Boyd versus McKinney, Friday, October 24th. David Look crew.
Look.
Frisco Lone Star versus Frisco Reedy, Thursday, November 6th. Joel Williams crew.
Williams, Joel.
South Oak Cliff versus Longview, Friday, September 12th. Mata crew.
Mata.
Plano versus McKinney Boyd, Friday, October 17th. Rodney Allison crew.
Allison.
Frisco Memorial versus Denison, Thursday, October 9th. Bernard Johnson crew.
Johnson.
Frisco versus McKinney North, Thursday, November 6th. Andre Liss crew.
Liss.
North Garland versus South Garland, Friday, October 17th. Carl Davis crew.
Davis.
Plano West versus Princeton, October 24th. Paul Majors crew.
Scott.
Okay, Plano West Princeton shows Paul Majors crew. Cedar Hill versus Waxahachie, Friday, October 17th. Joe Greer crew.
Greer.
Waxahachie versus Forney, September 12th. Velasquez crew.
Velasquez.
Lake Highlands versus Irving MacArthur, October 3rd. Ricky Heron crew.
Heron.
Mesquite versus Lancaster, Friday, October 24th. Paul Wood Crew.
Wood.
Dallas Hillcrest versus Dallas Thomas Jefferson, Thursday, October 23rd. Carl Davis Crew.
Davis.
Duncanville versus South Oak Cliff, Friday, September 5th. Carl Davis Crew.
Davis.
Dallas Thomas Jefferson versus Dallas Spruce, October 17th. Joe DeGraw Crew.
DeGraw.
Prosper Walnut Grove versus Frisco Emerson, September 12th. Ricky Herring Crew.
Aaron.
That was a record pick, Coach. You were quick. Okay, Lakeview Centennial versus Garland Rowlett, Thursday, October 16th. Teo. Fulton Crew. Thank you, Coach.
Fulton.
Dallas Samuel versus Dallas Woodrow Wilson, Thursday, October 23rd. Braylon Morrison Crew.
Morrison.
Dallas Sunset versus R.L. Turner, Thursday, October 23rd. Andre Liss Crew.
Liss.
West Mesquite versus Brian Adams, Friday, October 10th. Mata Crew.
Bottom.
Denison versus Frisco Liberty, October 17th. Rick Ford Crew.
Ford.
McKinney North, Frisco Reedy, Friday, October 10th. Paul Wood Crew.
Wood.
Plano East versus Plano, October 24th.
Joe Williams.
Joe Williams Crew.
Williams. Joel.
Frisco Reedy versus Frisco Centennial, October 17th. Mata Crew.
Mata.
Garland versus Lakeview Centennial, Thursday, October 23rd. Mata Crew.
Mata.
J.J. Pierce versus Irving MacArthur, 10/24, October 24th.
Wasserman.
Wasserman Crew.
Wasserman.
Richardson Berkner versus Jesuit, Friday, October 31st. Lawrence Crew,
Lawrence.
Frisco Independence versus Frisco Memorial, September 18th. Ricky Heron Crew.
Aaron.
Garland Saxe versus North Garland, Thursday, October 9th. Mata Crew.
Mata.
Prosper Rock Hill versus Plano East, Thursday, October 16th. Velasquez Crew.
Velasquez.
South Garland versus Wiley East, Thursday, October 9th. Was that Velasquez?
Velasquez.
Velasquez Crew. Terrell versus Ennis, Friday, October 17th. What was that, Coach? Royland Lee Crew.
Lee.
Lebanon Trail versus Frisco Heritage, October 17th. Matthews Crew.
Matthews.
Melissa versus Frisco Emerson, Friday, October 24th. Bernard Johnson Crew.
Johnson.
Creekview versus R.L. Turner, Friday, October 10th. Joel Williams Crew. Joel Williams Crew.
Williams. Joel.
Roy City versus North Forney, Friday, October 24th. Carl Davis crew.
Davis.
North Forney versus Rockwall Heath, Friday, October 10th. Andre Liss.
Liss.
McKinney versus Prosper, Friday, October 17th. Velasquez crew.
Velasquez.
Jesuit versus Lake Highlands, Friday, October 10th. John Penn crew.
Penn.
Dallas Wilson versus Dallas South Oak Cliff, Friday, October 17th. Terrence Williams crew.
Williams. Terrence.
Irving Nimitz versus J.J. Pierce, Thursday, October 30th. Is that Velasquez, Coach? Velasquez.
Velasquez.
Princeton versus Plano East, Friday, September 12th. Royland Lee crew.
Lee.
Lovejoy versus Prosper Walnut Grove, Friday, October 24th. Rick Ford crew.
Ford.
Prosper versus Plano East, Friday, September 26th. John Penn crew.
Penn.
Forney versus Royce City, Friday, October 3rd. Lawrence crew.
Lawrence.
Newman Smith versus Creekview, Friday, November 7th. Royland Lee crew.
Lee.
Greenville versus Terrell, Friday, October 24th. Owens, Steve Owens crew.
Owens.
Highland Park versus Red Oak, Friday, October 3rd. Nat Maxim crew.
Maxon.
Wiley East first name and force, Thursday, October 16th. Carl Davis crew.
Davis.
Crandall versus Corsicana, Friday, September 26th. Daryl Cardell crew.
Cardell.
Gardner Outlet versus South Grand Prairie, Thursday, August 28th. Rodney Allison crew.
Allison.
Dallas Molina versus Dallas W.T. White, October 24th. Was it Joe Greer? Joe Greer crew.
Greer.
Wiley versus Garland Saxey, Friday, September 19th. Rodney Allison crew.
Allison.
Rockwall versus Tyler Legacy, Friday, October 24th.
Allison.
Rodney Allison crew.
Allison.
Richardson versus Irving Nimitz, Thursday, October 9th. Ricky Heron crew.
Aaron.
North Mesquite versus Dallas Molina, Thursday, October 6th. Was that O? Tay O crew.
O.
Dallas W.T. White versus Dallas Sunset, Thursday, October 16th. Joe Greer crew.
Greer.
Dallas Seagoville versus Dallas Hillcrest, Friday, October 17th. John Penn crew.
Penn.
Sherman versus McKinney North, Friday, September 19th. Andre Liss crew.
Liss.
Irving MacArthur versus Irving, Friday, October 31st. Folks, if we can keep a little bit of background noise down, that will help me hear the picks. Thank you. MacArthur versus Irving, Friday, October 31st. Say it again, please. Redfern crew.
Redfern.
Rockwall Heath versus Roy City, Friday, October 17th. David Tucker crew. Frisco Wakeland versus Frisco Centennial, Friday, October 3rd. Velasquez crew. Allen versus McKinney Boyd, Friday, October 31st. David Tucker crew. Red Oak versus Tyler, Friday, November 7th. Velasquez crew. Dallas Spruce versus Dallas Adamson, Friday, October 24th. Anderson crew. Anderson crew. Irving versus J.J. Pierce, Thursday, October 9th. Say it again, please. Randall Moose crew. Thank you. Frisco Liberty versus Prosper Walnut Grove, Thursday, October 9th. John Penn crew. Frisco Centennial versus Frisco Lebanon Trail, Friday, October 10th. Wasserman crew. Dallas Adamson versus Dallas Samuel, Friday, October 17th. Which one? With Terrence or Joel? Joel? Joel Williams crew. Mesquite Horn versus DeSoto, Friday, October 17th. Paul Wood crew. Denton Ryan versus Azel, Friday, October 17th. Steve Owens crew. Okay, folks, we've got through the first two rounds. Probably want to take a little bit, about a 5-minute break, and then come back in here, and we'll promptly get started on round 3. Yeah. Yeah. He moved. Yeah, his wife got relocated. She was a nurse to Utah.
Okay.
And so he went up there. He was there actually last year. And flew back for the games.
Did he? Well, we're over here kicking guys around, and we've got him as like, he's first choice, second choice. And I look up and I go, guys,
He's not even
up there.
Yeah, we lost 4. We were down 4 crews this year. Just 8 people aging out, moving.
Well, I mean, that part's natural. I just hate guys. I hate losing.
Well,
Ty was just
we need
15
59
professional.
crews. There's weeks when we have 65, 66
yeah.
games, not counting 6-man.
Well, I thought I got asked about that. He's called for me since I came.
Yeah. No, we miss him. He was a good dude. Okay, we're ready.
All right, guys, here we go. Get the
Man, meet you. There you go.
All right, gentlemen, here we go. Third pick, third round, first pick, Mesquite Poteet versus Crandall on Thursday, 9/18. Teo crew. Pick 2, Lancaster versus Dallas Skyline, Friday, October 10th. Velasquez crew. R.L. Turner versus Mesquite West Mesquite on Friday, October 3rd. Paul Major's crew. Frisco Heritage versus Frisco Wakeland on Friday, October 10th. Steve Owens crew. Cedar Hill versus Lancaster, Friday, September 26th. Bernard Johnson crew. Mesquite versus Cedar Hill, Friday, October 10th. Cardell crew. McKinney Boyd versus Prosper Rockhill, Thursday, 10/9. Owens crew. Naming Forest versus Lakeview Centennial, Friday, 10/10. Grady Dale crew. Plano West versus Richardson JJ on Friday, 9/3, 9/5. Ricky Herring crew. Thomas Jefferson versus Woodrow, Friday, 9/26. Xavier Velasquez. The Colony versus Mansfield Summit, Friday, 10/3. David Tucker crew. Hillcrest versus Spruce, Friday, 9/26. Vanderhoff, Jonathan Vanderhoff crew. Plano East versus McKinney Boyd on Friday, 10/3. Riley crew. Frisco Emerson versus Frisco Liberty, Friday, 10/3. Carl Davis crew. Lakeview Centennial versus South Garland, Thursday, 10/2. Tucker, David Tucker crew. Anna versus Denison, Friday, 10/24. David Tucker crew. Frisco Reedy versus Lebanon Trail, Thursday, 9/25. Ford, Rick Ford crew. North McKinney versus Frisco Wakeland, Friday, 9/26. Mata crew. South Oak Cliff versus Thomas Jefferson, Thursday, 11/6. Tom Poor crew. Dallas Sunset versus North Mesquite on Friday, 10/10. Vanderhoff, Jonathan Vanderhoff crew. West Mesquite versus W.T. White, Friday, 9/26. Ricky Herring crew. Frisco Independence versus Anna on Thursday, 10/2. Mata crew. Denison versus Prosper Walnut Grove, Friday, 9/26. Tucker crew. Plano versus Plano West, Friday, 10/3. Vanderhoff crew. Brian Adams versus R.L. Turner on Thursday, 9/25. John Matthews crew. North Garland versus Wiley East, Friday, 9/26. Grady Dale? Grady Dale crew. Lake Highlands versus Nimitz on Friday, 10/24. Moody, Jeff Moody crew. Lebanon Trail versus North McKinney on Thursday, 10-2. Carl Davis crew. Waxahachie versus Mesquite Horn, Friday, 10-10. Paul Major's crew. Berkner versus Richardson, Friday, 9/26. Woods. Terrence Williams. Terrence Williams crew. Roy City versus Rockwall, Friday, 9/26. Lawrence, Shane Lawrence crew. Prosper versus Plano, Friday, 10-10. Look, David Look crew. Duncanville versus Cedar Hill, Thursday, 11/6. Grady Dale crew. Dale's not available. David Tucker, not available. Roy Lee. Creekview versus North Mesquite, Thursday, 9/25. Mata crew. North Forney versus Longview, Friday, 10/31. Slayton. Skyline versus Cedar Hill, Friday, 9/19. Joel Williams crew. Garland versus Rowlett, Friday, 10-3. Lento. The Lento crew. Molina versus Sunset, Saturday, 10-4. Terrence Williams crew. McKinney versus Princeton on Friday, 10-3. Mata crew. Princeton versus Plano, Friday, 9/26. Gillum crew. Tommy Gillum crew. Highland Park versus Rockwall Heath, Friday, 8/29. Penn, John Penn crew. Frisco Lone Star versus Frisco, Thursday, 10-2. John Penn crew. Frisco versus Little Elm, Friday, 8/29. Rodney Allison crew. Rockwall versus Longview, Friday, 10-3. Owens, Steve Owens crew. Nimitz versus Irvin, Friday, 10/17. Wasserman, Jeff Wasserman crew. South Garland versus Wiley, Friday, 9/26. John Matthews crew. Newman Smith versus Molina, Friday, 9/26. Joe Greer crew. Seagoville versus Samuel, Friday, 9/26. Raylan Morrison crew. W.T. White versus Creekview, Friday, 10-3. Matthews crew, John Matthews crew. Samuel versus Thomas Jefferson, Friday, 10-3. Terrence Williams crew. North Mesquite versus Newman Smith, Friday, 10-3. Braylon Morrison crew. Woodrow Wilson versus Adamson, Friday, 10-3. Cardell. Jesuit versus Richardson, Friday, 10-24. Mitchell crew, Greg Mitchell. Wiley East versus Lakeview Centennial, Friday, 9-12. Terrence Williams crew. Greenville versus Ennis, Thursday, 10-9. Thomas Poor crew. Terrell versus Kaufman, Friday, 9-26. Benson, Tony Benson crew. Forney versus Rockwall Heat, Thursday, 11-6. Rick Ford crew. Sherman versus Frisco Heritage, Friday, 10-3. Wood, Paul Wood crew. Melissa versus Lovejoy, 10-3. Liss Crew. Frisco Memorial versus Frisco Emerson, Friday, 9/26. Allison Crew. Red Oak versus Joshua, Friday, 10/10. Morrison Crew. Rockwall Heath versus Tyler Legacy, Friday, 9/26. Ford, Rick Ford Crew. J.J. Pierce versus Richardson, Friday, 10/17. Who? Shane Lawrence Crew. Lovejoy versus Frisco Independence, Friday, 10/10. Velasquez Crew. Not available, Coach. Oh. Not available. Grady Dale. Not available, Coach. Royland Lee. Crandall versus Heritage, Friday, 10/17.
Middle, yeah. I couldn't see all the word. Those are short-term readers.
Maxing Crew. Allen versus Rock Hill, Friday, 9/12. Penn, John Penn Crew. Saxey versus Wiley East, Friday, 10/3. Look. David Look crew. Rowlett versus Saxey, Thursday, 11-6. Allison crew. Walnut Grove versus Melissa, Friday, 10:31. Lee, Roland Lee crew. Frisco Liberty versus Frisco Independence, Friday, 9:26. David Look crew. Frisco Wakeland versus Frisco Reedy, Thursday, 9:18. Rodney Allison crew. Rock Hill versus Prosper, Friday, 10-3.
Oh, Frisco Centennial Sherman.
I'm sorry. Frisco Centennial versus Sherman, Friday, 9:26. Who? Majors, Paul Majors crew. Rockwall versus Prosper, Friday, 10-3. Rock Hill. Prosper Rock Hill versus Prosper, 10-3.
Get you some glasses.
Allison crew. MacArthur versus Jesuit on Thursday, 10-16. Vanderhoff crew. Denton Ryan versus Northwest Eaton, Friday, 8:29. Velasquez crew. Irving versus Jesuit on Thursday, 9:25. Ricky Heron crew. Richardson versus Irvin on Friday, 10-3. Who? David Stevens. Spruce versus Seagoville, Friday, 10-3. Dixon crew. Dixon crew. Dixon. Not available. Ford. Thomas Poor crew. Wiley versus Naaman Forrest, Friday, 10-3.
He wanted Ford. He wanted Ford, not Ford.
He wanted Ford. Ford, Rick Ford. Okay, now we get to Wiley versus Naaman Forrest, Friday, 10-3. Fulton. Andrew Fulton crew. Adamson versus Thomas Jefferson, Thursday, 9-18. Joe Greer crew. Mesquite Horn versus Mesquite on Friday, 9/26. Wood, Paul Wood crew. Wood, Paul Wood. R.L. Turner versus W.T. White, Thursday, 9/11. Joe DeGraw crew. Frisco Reedy versus Sherman, Friday, 9/12. Jeff Wasserman crew. Lakeview Centennial versus North Garland, Thursday, 9/18. Grady Dale crew. Plano versus Allen, Friday, 9/19. Davis. Carl Davis crew. Mesquite Poteet versus Woodrow Wilson, Friday, 9/12. Carl Davis crew. Lake Highlands versus Irving, Thursday, 11/6. David Steffen. Mesquite versus DeSoto, Friday, 9/19. Velasquez crew. Sunset versus Newman Smith, Thursday, 9/18. Vanderhoff crew. The Colony versus Grapevine, Friday, 10/17. Ashby crew. McKinney Boyd versus Prosper, Friday, 9/19. Dale, Grady Dale crew. Lebanon Trail versus Wakeland, Thursday, 9/11. Herring, Ricky Herring crew. Anna versus Highland High, Friday, 9/5. Velasquez crew. Berkner versus Lake Highlands, Friday, 10/17. David Stevens crew. Skyline versus Crowley, Friday, 9/12. Joe Greer crew. Lone Star versus Centennial, Friday, 9/19. John Matthews crew. Plano West versus Prosper Rock Hill, Friday, 9/26. Redford. Thomas Jefferson versus A Plus Academy, Friday, 9/12. Guy Redford. Lancaster versus Mesquite Horn, Friday, 9/19. Mata crew. Frisco Heritage versus Frisco Lone Star, Thursday, 9/25. Grady Dale crew. All right, got our screen back. Waxahachie versus Mesquite, Thursday, 11/6. John Penn crew. Duncanville versus Mesquite Horn, Friday, 10/24. Mata is not available. Owens. Not available, coach. Shane Lawrence crew. Garland versus South Garland, Friday, 9/19. Steve Owens crew. West Mesquite versus Molina, Thursday, 9/11. Thomas Gibson crew. Molina versus Creekview, Friday, 9/19. Joe Greer crew. Rockwall versus Austin Lake Travis, Friday, 9/5. Allison. North Forney versus Skyline, Friday, 8/29. Dale, Brady Dale crew. Greenville versus Mesquite Poteet, Friday, 9/26. Maxon crew. Frisco versus Sherman, Thursday, 10/9. Wasserman crew. North Mesquite versus West Mesquite, Friday, 9/19. Lawrence crew. Creekview versus Sunset, Friday, 9/12. Vanderhoff crew. Hillcrest versus Fort Worth Western Hills, Thursday, 9/11. Grady Dale crew. Sherman versus Frisco Lone Star, Friday, 10/17. Vanderhoff crew. McKinney versus Plano, Thursday, 9/11. Allison crew. Melissa versus Frisco Liberty, Friday, 9/19. Lee, Roland Lee crew. Red Oak versus the Colony Heritage, Friday, 8/29. Greer, Joe Greer crew. Forney versus A&M Consolidated, Friday, 9/5. Teo crew. Nimitz versus Berkner, Friday, 10/3. Grady Dale crew. Samuel versus Hillcrest, Friday, 9/19. Cardell Crew. South Oak Cliff versus Adamson, Thursday, 9:25. Rolling Lee Crew. Carroll versus Frisco Heritage, Friday, 9-5. Tucker Crew. JJ Pierce versus Lake Highlands, Friday, 9:26. Steve Owens Crew. South Garland versus Rowlett, Thursday, 9/11. Look, David Look Crew. Wanna Grove versus Frisco Memorial, Thursday, 10-2. Teo Crew. Allen versus Cedar Hill, Friday, 9-5. Mata Crew. Frisco Independence versus Melissa, Friday, 10-17. Moody Crew. Newman Smith versus Wanna Grove, Friday, 8/29.
It's right there, Coach.
Carl Davis Crew. Wiley East versus McKinney North, Thursday, 8/28. Steve Owens Crew. Woodrow Wilson versus Seagoville, Thursday, 9/18. Mata Crew. Princeton versus Allen, Friday, 10/10. Allison Crew. Frisco Wakeland versus Frisco, Thursday, 10/16. Allison Crew. Naaman Forest versus Garland, Thursday, 9/25. Velasquez Crew. Denison versus Frisco Independence, Friday, 9/12. Look, David Look Crew. Saxy versus Lakeview Centennial, Thursday, 9:25. List Crew. Plano East versus Plano West, Friday, 9:19. David Look Crew. Highland Park versus Jesuit, Friday, 9:12. Allison Crew. North Garland versus Wiley, Friday, 9:12. Majors Crew, Paul Majors. McKinney North versus Frisco Lone Star, Friday, 9:12. Paul Wood Crew. Lovejoy versus Anna, Friday, 9:19. Wasserman Crew. W.T. White versus Brian Adams, Friday, 9:19. Vanderhoff Crew. MacArthur versus Nimitz, Friday, 9:26. Randy Moose Crew. Frisco Liberty versus Lovejoy, Thursday, 9/11. Tucker Crew. Frisco Centennial versus Frisco, Friday, 9/12. Grady Dale Crew. Roy City versus Denton Braswell, Friday, 9/12. Moody. Jeff Moody crew. Prosper Rockhill versus Princeton, Friday, 9/19. Campbell crew. Prosper versus Plano West, Thursday, 11/6. Davis, Carl Davis crew. Frisco Emerson versus Frisco Reedy, Thursday, 9/4. David Tucker crew. Denton Ryan versus Brewer, Thursday, 10:30. John Penn crew. Rowlett versus Wiley, Friday, 10:10. Who, coach? Lento, Ken Lento crew. Richardson versus Plano, Friday, 9/5. Grady Dell crew. Mesquite Horn versus Arlington Lamar, Friday, 9/12. Thomas Gibson crew. Spruce versus South Oak Cliff, Thursday, 9/18. Cordell crew. Ryan Adams versus North Mesquite, Thursday, 9/11. Tony Benson crew. Cedar Hill versus Red Oak, Friday, 9/12. Cardell crew. Frisco Memorial versus Melissa, Friday, 9/12. Tucker crew. Jesuit versus Jesuit New Orleans, Friday, 9/5. Rick Ford crew. Crandall versus Hallsville, Friday, 9/5. Roland Lee crew. Rockwall Heath versus San Juan Hills, California, Friday, 9/12. Liss crew. Wiley versus Garland, Friday, 10/17. Majors crew. Irvin versus Crandall, Thursday, 9/11. Greer crew.
I'll take it from here.
All right.
You did two. I'll do the last one real quick. There is, yeah. Good job. Okay, Plano, Odessa Permian, Friday, August 29th. David Look crew. R.L. Turner versus Trimble Tech, Thursday, September 4th. Royland Lee crew. Richardson Berkner versus Mesquite Horn, Friday, September 5th. Darrell Cardell crew. Frisco Reedy versus Mansfield Lake Ridge, Thursday, August 28th. Matthews? John Matthews crew. Sunset versus Spruce, September 5th. Bernard Johnson crew. The Colony versus Argyle, Friday, November 7th. Paul Majors crew. Frisco Lone Star versus Garland, Friday, September 5th. Steve Owens crew. Lancaster versus Aledo, Friday, September 5th. Shane Lawrence crew. Lakeview Centennial versus McKinney, Thursday, September 4th. Vasquez crew. Mesquite Poteet versus Sulphur Springs, Friday, August 29th. Cardell crew. We good with the last one? Did you get Cardell for the last pick? Yeah, that was Poteet, Sulphur Springs, right? Cardell, yes. Dallas Molina versus Dallas Samuel, Friday, August 29th. Teo crew. Frisco Lebanon Trail versus Frisco Liberty, Friday, August 29th. David Tucker crew. If we can keep the noise down in the back, please, that'll help us hear the picks. Thank you. JJ Pierce versus Louisville Marcus, Friday, September 12th. David Steffen. Dallas Thomas Jefferson versus Dallas Roosevelt, Friday, September 5th. David Look Crew. Prosper Walnut Grove versus Little Elm, Thursday. Motto Crew. Frisco versus Lebanon Trail, Thursday, October 23rd. John Penn Crew. Melissa versus Frisco, Friday, September 5th. Andre List Crew. McKinney Boyd versus Wiley East, Friday, September 5th. Fulton Crew. Plano West versus McKinney, Friday, October 10th. Thomas Poor Crew. Anna versus Prosper Richland, Friday, August 29th. David Steffen Crew. Naaman Forest versus Princeton, Thursday, September 4th. Richard Campbell Crew. Dallas Samuel versus Kemp, Thursday, September 11th. Joel Williams Crew. West Mesquite versus Mesquite Poteet, Thursday, September 4th. Joe Greer Crew. North Mesquite versus Arlington Seguin, Friday, August 29th. Rick Ford Crew. Denison versus Decatur, Friday, September 5th. Matt Maxon Crew. South Oak Cliff versus Dallas Seagullville, Thursday, October 23rd. Grady Dale it is. Highland Park versus Pulaski Academy, September 19th. Rick Ford crew. Plano East versus Royce City, Friday, August 29th. Bernard Johnson crew. Creekview versus Irving, Thursday, August 28th. Say again, please. Teo? Teo crew, please. Princeton versus Prosper, Thursday, October 30th. David Look crew. North Garland versus Lake Highlands, Friday, September 5th. Joe Greer crew. Frisco Liberty versus Frisco Centennial, Thursday, September 4th. Teo crew. Frisco Independence versus Prosper Walnut Grove, November 7th. Bernard Johnson crew. Allen versus Midland Legacy, Friday, August 29th. Joel Williams. Irving Nimitz versus Fort Worth Pascal, Thursday, September 4th. Still a lot, please. David Steffen, is that right? Mesquite versus North Mesquite, Friday, September 5th. Wasserman crew. Dallas Wilson versus White House, Friday, August 29th. Vanderhoff crew. McKinney versus Frisco Emerson, Friday, August 29th. Wasserman Crew. Sherman versus Frisco Lebanon Trail, Friday, November 7th. Maxon Crew. Lovejoy versus Highland Park, Friday, September 5th. John Penn Crew. Duncanville versus Dallas Skyline, Friday, September 26th. John Penn Crew. Not available, Coach. David Tucker. Not available, Coach. Not available, Coach. Andre Liss. Not available. If we can keep it down, please. Thank you. Keep the voice to a minimum, please. Thank you. Wasserman Crew. North Forney versus Plano East, Friday, September 5th. Say again, Coach. Braylon Morrison Crew, thank you. Garland versus North Dallas, Thursday, August 28th. Joe Greer Crew. Rockwall versus Louisville, Thursday, September 11th. Paul Wood Crew. Garland Saxey versus Garland, September 12th, Friday night. Nat Maxon Crew. Prosper Rock Hill versus Keller Timber Creek, Friday, August 29th. Lawrence Crew. Garland Rowlett versus Wiley East, Thursday, October 23rd. Velasquez Crew. Irving MacArthur versus Joshua, Friday, September 5th. Greg Mitchell Crew. Denton Ryan versus Keller Fossil Ridge, Thursday, September 11th. Mata Crew. Richardson versus Lakeview Centennial, Thursday, August 28th. Vanderhoff crew. South Garland versus Irving, Friday, September 5th. Terrence Williams crew. Terrell versus Frisco Memorial, Friday, August 29th.
Terrence Williams?
Terrence Williams crew. Dallas Spruce versus Dallas Wilmer Hutchins, Friday, September 12th. Bernard Johnson crew. Waxahachie versus Dallas Skyline, Friday, October 24th. Grady Dale crew. Newman Smith versus Brian Adams, Thursday, October 23rd. Darrell Cardare crew. McKinney North versus Northwest Justin, Northwest, Thursday, September 4th. Bill Dixon crew. Frisco Wakeland versus the Colony, Thursday, September 4th. John Penn crew. Frisco Heritage versus Greenville, Friday, August 29th. Maxon crew. Hillcrest versus Elgin of Oklahoma, Friday, September 5th. Bradley Thompson. If we could keep the noise down, please, so we can still hear the picks. Thank you. Royce City versus Garland Rowlett, Friday, September 5th. Moody crew. Dallas W.T. White versus Dallas Seagoville, Thursday, September 4th. Bernard Johnson crew. Rockwell Heath versus Prosper, Thursday, September 4th. Rodney Allison crew. Red Oak versus Colleen Ellison, Friday, September 19th. Terrence Williams crew. Wiley versus Flower Mound, Friday, September 5th. Bill Dixon crew. Frisco Emerson versus Frisco Independence, Thursday, October 30th. Terrence Williams crew. Cedar Hill versus Midlothian, Friday, August 29th. Ivan Buckner crew. Frisco Centennial versus Frisco Independence, Thursday, August 28th. Velasquez crew. Frisco Memorial versus Dallas Woodrow Wilson, Friday, September 5th. Taylor? Oh, sorry, Ben Taylor. Ben Taylor crew. Dallas Samuel versus Dallas Conrad, Friday, September 5th. Guy Redfern crew. Richardson and J.J. Pierce versus Wiley, Friday, 8/29. Steve Owens crew. Allen versus Plano West, Friday, October 17th. Was that Look, Coach? David Look. South Oak Cliff versus Dallas Hillcrest, Friday, October 3rd. Bradley Thompson crew. Garland Neiman Forest versus Grand Prairie, Friday, August 29th. Ken Lento crew. Richardson Berkner versus Irving MacArthur, Thursday, October 9th. Vanderhoff crew. Anna versus Frisco Liberty, Thursday, November 6th. Thompson crew. Sherman versus Prosper Rock Hill, Friday, September 5th. Ken Lento crew. North Garland versus McKinney Boyd, Friday, August 29th. Paul Major's crew. North Forney versus Mesquite, Friday, September 12th. Steve Owens crew. Check that. Shane Lawrence crew. Thank you, Coach. Highland Park versus Cleburne, Friday, October 24th. Stacy Ashby crew. Dallas Spruce versus Dallas Roosevelt, Friday, August 29th. Raylan Morrison crew. Irving Nimitz versus Arlington Sam Houston, Friday, August 29th. Andrew Fulton Crew. Dallas WTY versus Dallas Hillcrest, Friday, August 29th. Gibson Crew. Garland Saxe versus Capel, Friday, August 29th. Randall Moose Crew. Dallas Sunset versus Dallas Adamson, Saturday, August 30th. Bernard Johnson Crew. Melissa versus Don Pasco Prep, Friday, August 29th. Jeff Moody Crew. North Forney versus Mansfield Lake Ridge, Friday, September 19th. David Tucker Crew. Thank you, coaches. Please make sure you get some lunch next door as you go out the doors to your left if you're hungry. Appreciate everything that you guys do, and thanks for coming, and we'll see you in spring games.
See you, Coach.